Hi everyone, I'm Myckayla and I am a registered social service worker and psychotherapist here at Health Counseling and Therapy.
Hi everyone, I am Corrie. I'm a registered psychotherapist and marriage and family therapy associate here at Health Counseling.
And welcome to the Health Counseling Show. Just a quick disclaimer, the content discussed on this show is for educational purposes and is not a substitute for care from a registered health professional. While we are psychotherapists, our conversations on the show are not meant to provide advice or suggest best practices, but to address important issues that affect the lives of everyday people. If you need any suggestions for mental health resources, check out our website.
Today we will be discussing topics of kids and family. So we're going to go through 2 questions and we're going to have Myckayla start.
Corrie and I are both therapists here at the practice that work pretty closely with kids. So we just wanted to jump right in with a couple of these questions. The first one being, how do I connect with kids when I get one-word answers or they do not want to open up? Corrie, want to take that one?
So I think this is a challenge that most parents have if you have a kid that's not naturally open. So some kiddos are just chatty and you can get as much as you need from them. Other kiddos, whether they're quiet or introverted, finding balance between respecting kiddos' boundaries with how much they want to share and trying to make communication fun. So with communication, you can play games. So you can get a lot of conversational games with questions. So the game is one, and I can look into kind of making a list of the games that we kind of use in the office that are also kind of family friendly. However, making it fun, kind of finding fun icebreaker conversations versus going to kiddos with what you want them to share. They might not want to share the highlight of their day. They might not want to share the worst part of their day. They might want to tell you about the snail they found, and it's completely random. And getting really curious with kids, a lot of parents tend to ask yes and no answer questions. The more you offer a kid open-ended questions, the more range that you're going to have. So what was something exciting today versus did you do anything exciting today? A kid can say yes or no versus, oh, I found a snail today, and that was so amazing. Like, I've never seen one like this. It was purple. So the more you can kind of get curious, give kids a lot of range, and make it fun. Yeah. Myckayla, anything to add?
No, I definitely agree with you on that one. There are those kids where you'll get those like, no, I don't know. And like even in session when that happens, I find that those open-ended questions can be kind of tough because depending on the kid, just because, again, you get those like, I don't know, or sure. And something I find, especially with the younger ones, being able to break it down to, do you want to talk about this or would you rather do this, and give like that choice.
For sure.
Where they can still practice a bit of that like autonomy and like being involved in the conversation, I find is a great way to get them going. And like you said, that playfulness, being able to like engage with them in whatever kind of organic way they're showing up. Something that I do with the kids in my life is handshakes. Like handshakes and high fives are such a great way to be able to like immediately connect in a way that's not necessarily verbal. So I know after a long day at work or just like, I wear a lot of hats, so I am busy a lot of the days. And sometimes when I get home, I'm like, I do not want to have a conversation right now. And I can just imagine what that's like as an 8-year-old coming home from school or a 15-year-old coming home from high school. And being able to just do like a quick, give me this high five or this handshake if we've had like a good day, and this one if we've had a bad day, and being able to like have some sort of connection. Because again, that's like 2 nervous systems connecting, 2 ways that people can connect in that nonverbal sense, where then they can take that step away, make themselves feel safe in whatever way that looks like, and then re-engage in the conversation, right? Where, oh, I had this handshake today because I had X, Y, and Z going on at school, or this happened with a friend. And I like what you said too about sometimes it's just the little things that they want to connect on, right? They don't want to talk about what their lunch was like or what their teacher was like or what they learned that day at school. Maybe it's like, my friend was wearing this really funny shirt today, or I made a bracelet today that was so cool. It's like, that's such a great way to be able to jump into that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that, as you said, sometimes kids don't want to talk, right? There's times where a kid comes home from work or school, and it's just, they're not feeling it. They're just not, that's not their day. So kind of remembering, hey, this kiddo does have boundaries and autonomy with communication, and they might not be ready to share the piece of information mom and dad and or caretaker are kind of looking for.
Exactly.
So if they kind of say, I don't know or no, getting curious of, hey, like, am I throwing a lot at this kid as soon as they come home? Maybe I can circle back to this after they've had some downtime. Can I give them some screen time within reason, of course? Parents get the green lights on screens, of course. But yeah, then just being able to say like, okay, they're just not in the mood for it. And parents not taking that personal, right? Exactly. It's okay if your kiddo is a little bit shy or a little bit quiet. They don't all need to be really good sharers all of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And that point too about that connection, like, oh, you don't want to talk right now? Do you want a hug? And then you can like do your thing and like, I'll check in with you later. Or what do you need from me right now? Having that conversation and being able to like get kids really in tune with like their needs while they're still being guided and co-regulated with parents is just, it's such a great practice to be able to build up to when they're adults and they're going to need to figure it out on their own, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even building on that, like nonverbal communication, right? So kind of like you said, it doesn't have to be a conversation. Can we play a game? What show do you want to watch? Do you want to go like get outside and go for a walk? Because then checking in on kind of how that kid's engagement looks like, body language looks like, energy looks like, you're going to then be able to gauge, did this kid have a good day? Are they in a good place? Is there maybe something going on that I'm not aware of? So parents kind of learning nonverbal communication can be just as valuable as verbal communication.
100%. Go to music. Music's always a great one too, right? Like you said, that singing or dancing, throw on their favorite song and just like have a dance party. It's the best way to like get the morning started for sure.
Yeah, what song do you want to listen to? Then you might be able to tell, hey, what kind of mood is this kid in? Like if they want to shake it off with Taylor Swift at 8:30 in the morning, they probably had a good night's sleep.
Exactly. Okay, so do you want to read our next question?
For sure. So question number 2 we have is, my friend was adopted as a baby. He was able to find his birth mother and reached out to meet. Despite his insistence, she has declined his offer. He's having a hard time with it, and even though it happened more than 10 years ago, it still bothers him. How could I help him out? Myckayla?
So this is an interesting one because my first gut instinct is like, be really, really clear with your boundaries as the individual. Like you're their friend. You're that person's friend. You're not their therapist. And so making sure that you aren't trying to like do too much for that person because it gets so overwhelming. Like adoption is such a tricky thing, especially when birth parents, there's like a disconnect happening there. So first piece of advice would definitely be take care of yourself. Make sure that you're not doing too much for your friend. As far as it goes for him, I think was the pronouns. Yeah. For him, adoption is super tough, right? It's something that we like intellectually can understand, but at like a physical nervous system level, it's a complete break in attachment to our primary caregivers, right? It's like that biological piece of us that we no longer have a connection to. So it is super, super tough. And then add on the piece that birth mom doesn't want to be in the life or is not responding to messages. It's like emotionally difficult and draining. So my number one suggestion for this person would be to make sure that they're connecting with a really, really good support in their life, hopefully a therapist. Not to like plug us, but like we're pretty great at
insert therapy referral here.
A lot of girls on the team here are great with adoption and working through attachment and trauma. And when I think about adoption, that's the first thing that comes to mind is that attachment bond that's being broken and looking at how this person has created safe relationships in their life, right? Even though birth mom doesn't want to be in the picture, who else has your friend been able to connect with and build these safe and secure relationships with? And if they haven't, then that should be like a primary focus in therapy, right? We can't change what birth mom wants to do or doesn't want to do. So many people have their own stories in life, and we can't stand on the outside and try and make assumptions or guesses on why she does or doesn't want to connect. Being able for him to be able to ground himself in like, I have family and friends who love me. I'm an important person. I do matter. These are the people that matter in my life. It's tough though. Like there is no like perfect solution to that. It's a really tough scenario.
For sure. Yeah. The question is a super hard one because trying to help someone through something that they might not be ready to go through, they might not ready to be accept, they may not be ready to say, hey, I can come to terms that this didn't play what they wanted to, is super hard. And I think the most important thing that came to mind for me with this question is we don't get to decide when other people do their healing. So we can kind of be there for a support and be there for a friend, but whether it's been 1 year, 5 years, north of 10 years, we can't tell that person, hey, it's time to be done grieving the loss that biomom doesn't want to connect. We can't be the one that says, hey, it's time for you to move on from this loss that biomom doesn't want to connect. So I think that's the really hard part, that the best thing that you could do is just to kind of be there and like meet him where he's at. It's not really up to anyone else to kind of say when that person moves on. I tell clients all the time does not heal all wounds. That's a super big myth. There are certain things that time passes and we move on from. But if we look into like the neuropsychology of the brain, there are certain trauma memories that do get stuck that shape how we see ourselves and how we see the world. So depending on what that person's adoption process looked like, that person might have some really deep emotional pain, wounds, negative beliefs about themselves. So until that person is kind of ready to move through, heal, accept, and grieve, it's really just kind of up to that person to be like, hey man, I'm here for you, and just let that person tell their story as many times as you can kind of handle, as Myckayla said. Be there for that person as much as you can kind of handle, as Myckayla said. So kind of just being a really good friend, a really good support, and just kind of remembering it takes as long as it takes.
It is. It's like, it's very individual, right? Like we can't just look at it, an adoption story, and just assume that everybody's going to have the same path and same experience, because every adoption family is going to be different. Every individual nervous system is going to be different in the way that they can connect with each other. So being able to like take it in stride, understand that everybody grieves and experiences things at a different rate, and doing what you can to support that person is really like all you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially for this one, it might be a lifelong process of grief, right?
Yeah.
People often see grief as something with a deadline, a timeline. It's going to get better at some point. Depending on what this person's story is, that might be something they grieve for life. That might be something they carry as a part of them, as the part of their identity, because it has shaped who they are, what they've been through, what their life looked like, how they understand themselves. And there's a lot of people that kind of hold the belief like blood is thicker than water. So when you meet that tummy mummy or you locate that bio parent, you expect that blood is thicker than water, so this person's going to want to be a part of my life. So not only have you grieved being given up for adoption, now you're re-entering grief that this person doesn't want to reconnect with you. Yeah. Because that kid who then became an adult might have been holding on to this narrative of they wanted to know me. Yeah. They couldn't keep me. If only they knew me now, if only they knew me as an adult, they might have been holding on to that story is not over. We're going to reconnect. There's a fairy tale ending to this. And then your friend at some point found out, hey, mom actually doesn't want the fairy tale ending.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be just as damaging and like re-traumatizing, like you said, because there's all these expectations and all these ideas that led into this like chance encounter or this potential meeting that never actually came to fruition. And so it's trying to like reestablish and reevaluate like, oh my gosh, what does this relationship look like moving forward? Because honestly, right now, it doesn't sound like there is a relation, like a two-way relationship.
Absolutely.
That your friend is still going through that, like, what is this going to look like for me now? And this is the tricky thing with family too, is despite adoption, birth family, whatever that looks like, family is tricky.
It is messy.
And it is very messy. And so there are going to be those family relationships that do not hit those marks that we expect them to hit, right? Even if we are involved with birth parents, adoptive parents, siblings, this, that, or the other, like relationships are going to look so different. And it's really up to us to stay grounded in like who we are as an individual and how we can exist in those relationships versus like trying to fix the other person or trying to like make sense of what their choices are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know why biomom made that choice, right? You don't need to have to be a good parent and or want to be a good parent to become pregnant, right? That's why we have choices for expecting moms to make. So that person's mom might have never been ready or viewed herself as a parental figure. So when that child then wants to reconnect, mom had already accepted a long time ago, potentially, that mother was not on her list. And regardless of that child's age, she didn't want to reconnect. And I can only imagine how heartbreaking that is for that kid. If that kid was holding on to growing up to be an adult and expecting that to be a repair, for this to be a healing relationship, I'm going to feel whole when I do find mom. And this whole time, mom might have been a person that wasn't in her story, that wasn't in her narrative.
Yeah, it is. It's, my heart definitely goes out to this person, and I do hope that they can find and connect with people who they can experience that love and support with, because they do deserve that. Every single person deserves to have that in their life, right?
And even jumping on the support thing, can you help your friend find a support group for other kiddos who have gone through adoption, right? Is this person the only person in your life that has gone through a story like this, and that person is having a hard time being the only person with a story like this, thinking everyone else I know either has two parents that are still together or two parents that are separated. So maybe suggesting to your friend, like, have you considered connecting with someone who's been adopted? Do you know anyone else who's been through this? I'm sure there are support groups virtually or in person, depending on where you're located, to connect with people who have been through similar stories.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, because we can only go through so much in isolation. Like, human beings aren't meant to be in isolation. I think we all learned that in COVID really, really well. I got obsessed with puzzles. I think that being able to connect with people who have either similar experiences or shared life paths, because nobody's going to know 100% what this person's gone through, but being able to have somebody who's like, hey, I've been adopted too, or I've struggled with finding birth parent, or I have a really difficult relationship with my birth parent and my adoptive parents have actually highlighted X, Y, and Z for me, right? Support groups can be so great, not just with adoption, but with all realms of like social life and experiences. I'm a huge, huge advocate for them. I think they're amazing. And like you said, in-person and virtual options, because here in Sarnia, there aren't a ton of places and options. Like, we're a small city, but connecting with people online safely, vet who you're sharing information with. Do not just give out your SIN number. But, you know, like, connecting.
Do not meet in parking garages.
Meet me in Toronto at this hotel. Oh, probably not. But, you know, like, connecting with people, it's really, really important. We're social creatures. We need to have that. And being able to be understood and have that empathetic person in your life is huge. Like, it can be super, super healing for people.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so moral of the story, meet your friend where they're at, respect their process. Don't decide what this looks like for them. This might be something that is a lifelong experience for them. So kind of just reminding them that they are loved, they are supported, they are valued, they are lovable no matter what happened, and then encouraging them to find the resources. I think that's kind of our takeaway for that call.
Okay. Why don't we do one more? Just so we'll do one of the light ones, because that one's easier to roll through. Okay, so this question is, how do I know if my kids' difficult experiences are traumatic or not?
Do you want me to take it away?
Sure, you can start us off with that one.
This is one that I get constantly, whether I work with this person's kid, whether I work with a couple, a family, a parent, especially millennials. I think millennials have a lot of complicated experiences with family structure. And I say that just because I work with a lot of millennials. So that's the population that I'm kind of pulling from. Nothing against any other generations. We've all got stuff. However, very often millennials will say, I'm so scared that I'm traumatizing my kid the same way that I have gone through things. And the hardest part about this question is we actually don't know. I wish I had a better answer for that, but I'm going to expand on it, because I won't just leave you with, sorry, we don't know.
Good luck.
Best of luck, A for effort. So the thing we can do is anything that seems like it might be traumatic for your kid, the more we can surround kids and hold kids and support them after something upsetting has happened, the less likely it is to be traumatic. So we don't know enough about the brain in the moment to know whether a memory is going to end up fragmented, which then suggests it becomes something traumatic for the kid. However, if things are upsetting, if you can make sure you're checking in with that kid, making sure that they know this is not their fault, giving them the supportive messages and having them know what they need to know, which I know can be hard for parents, because parents are like, how am I supposed to know that? Knowing you are still loved, you are still important, this is not your fault, I'm still here for you, this doesn't change our relationship. And just giving them lots and lots of emotional support, lots of physical contact if that's their vibe. Lots of letting them tell the story as many times as they need to is a huge one for little kids. Little kids, they will just repeat it and repeat it until their brain makes sense of it, and just keep letting them repeat it. Just be there for that story 101 times. And then that way you're giving your kid the best shot for it not to be traumatic, but we're all just doing the best we can with what we've got, honestly. We don't know what's going to happen. However, make the best decision for your kiddo at the time when something upsetting happens is kind of my takeaway.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with that one, because every brain and every person is going to translate something differently and going to hold on to something differently. I think there was a study done on experiences with Hurricane Katrina, and for people who went through Hurricane Katrina and what it was like to lose their homes and lose their jobs and go through the flooding and all those different pieces. But people who went through support groups had less, like a lower rate of PTSD versus people who just like dealt with it in isolation. And it looked different across the board. I think the key piece is that you can go through the same experience and have very, very different perspectives and outcomes on what happens. And so your point there on like, check in with your kid and what does your kid need? Because obviously a 3, 5, 8-year-old is not going to be like, I need emotional support, I need you. They're going to throw tantrums and they're going to act out and their behaviors are going to change. And so it is up to the parent to be that co-regulator and be like, I need to be present as I can be. Because most of the time when we're talking about like big T trauma, probably something that the whole family has gone through and not just the kid in isolation. And so keeping in mind that parents are also trying to take care of themselves in that moment too. But like you said, giving those hugs, being as present as you can be, letting them talk, letting them share, and not invalidating their feelings. If this is something that your kid went through without you being present, do not diminish it. Do not dismiss it, saying, oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, just get over it. Oh, it's just a little thing. Those are the tough pieces, because that's like sending messages to kids of like, oh, your emotions are like extreme, or they don't have a space here, right? Whereas when you can be the parent and be 100% supportive regardless of what the kid's going through, and be that like guide, be that director for them, is all that you can do in those moments. Because like you said, there's no perfect answer on like, this is trauma and this is not trauma. Every person is different and every experience is going to be different.
Yeah, and jumping on your Hurricane Katrina example, absolutely, the more support you have, the less trauma is likely to occur. And to kind of build on that, the less trauma you have in your history also kind of impacts it. So if a kid has gone through a lot of, I'm not sure if everyone knows, Myckayla had mentioned big T trauma. So big T trauma, just to kind of sidebar here, big T trauma are the really big events that if anyone heard that story, they're going to say, yes, that's trauma. So car accidents, hurricanes, SA, violence in the family, all of those things are big T trauma. Small T trauma, though, is little things that we've been through. And by little, I mean like small interactions. And sometimes they're ongoing. So I like to call them like emotional paper cuts. So every time you were put down, or every time you were shamed by a teacher, or a kid at school made fun of you. So those are examples of small T trauma. And what we know is the more small T trauma a kid has, the more likely a big T trauma is to stick as trauma. So the more safety and security you can give your kid on a regular basis, if and when that kiddo does hit something big, they're much more likely to be able to kind of move through that and be okay, because they have that really strong, secure base. The kid that's covered in emotional paper cuts is going to be a lot more impacted by the big stuff.
Exactly. You're helping them build that resilience throughout their experiences. So when the big T things hit, they can manage it, right? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be like a smooth thing to process, but the fact that they've been able to build that resilience and support over the years with you as their parent or their caregiver, it sets them up so much better for being able to like manage and cope with the big things that do come in their lives.
Absolutely. The kid that has the really strong, confident sense of self that I am loved, I am lovable, I am good enough. When that kid hits a storm, they can weather it. The kid that already feels like I'm not good enough, I'm broken, I'm damaged, whatever that looks like, that storm hits, and that's just one more huge crack in a kid that already had a lot of cracks, and it's devastating to see. So the more you can just kind of build up your kid to feel safe, secure, and loved, the less likely your kid is going to experience the long impact of trauma. We can't control that bad things happen in the world. We can't control that people have upsetting things happen. And another one too is, especially with kids, not so much if the difficult experiences are going to be traumatic or not. However, we can also educate our kids. So the more education you give your kid, the more they're going to be able to kind of protect themselves from trauma. I can't count the amount of times I've kind of heard stories of SA or dangerous situations because that kid just didn't know any better.
Yeah.
There were kids that don't know what boundaries look like, what appropriate touching looks like, what safety looks like. Kids that were encouraged to keep secrets from unsafe adults in their life. The more you can kind of say like, hey, my kid might go through something upsetting and I'm going to prepare that kid. I'm going to make sure that they know this is what right looks like. This is what wrong looks like. This is when they know they can come to me. The less likely that trauma is going to continue because the amount of times trauma has been ongoing and had a much longer and significant effect on a kid because they just didn't know to tell anyone. They didn't know who to go to and who to bring that secret to because the unsafe person in their life either manipulated, lied, encouraged them to keep secrets because of X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah. I think a big thing for this one too, like my final thought on it is so many people, like you mentioned millennials at the beginning of answering this question. I feel like so many millennials are very, very worried about traumatizing their kids, right? They sit in our offices and they go, I don't want to be the reason that my kid's here in 20 years. And we can't fully control that. But it's also like giving yourself a bit of grace as a parent. Like not everything is going to be a major, big event that's going to lead your kid to therapy down the road. Therapy's for everybody. It's not just for people who have gone through major traumas or anything. It can be a great support and a great way to navigate anything that's happening in your life. But as parents, being able to like take a step back and go, I'm doing everything that I can do here in this moment to support my kid in the best way that I know how. Reach out for those parenting supports if you do need them, if you are looking for more resources. Everyone here at the team is great with that. But also just like flowing with life as it comes, right? Like you can be a parent and not worry every single day about like, how is my kid going to be traumatized today? Because then that's also setting your kid up for like, what do I need to be worried for, right? We don't want to pass that on to kids. So being able to kind of sit in that gray area of like, okay, how was your day? Or how did you experience that versus putting it on to them as like, oh, you went through this big trauma. Let me check in with you, right? Letting your kids kind of have that space to explore that again with you being that support for them is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And my final thought, kind of building on what you said, is you can't fill gaps you can't see.
No.
I tell clients all the time, I tell parents all the time, because often the parent that says, how do I know if my kids' events are going to be traumatic or not, is the parent that sees the gaps that their parents had. And they're showing up to therapy to fill those gaps. So the fact that you're already seeing gaps of previous generations and you're doing your best to fill those, you're already making that gap smaller and then giving yourself the grace that we can't fill gaps that we cannot see. There are going to be things we misstep. Parenting is not a perfect science. Parenting changes with every generation. Yeah. The messages you are given today versus in 10 years from now, like Gen X and Gen Z or whichever one's behind. No, Gen Z. They're going to have totally different messages and understanding of parenting. And I think we're all just doing the best we can with what we have. So if something ends up having a negative effect on your kid, as soon as you do see the gap, just doing your best to fill it because you didn't know it was there. You didn't create it on purpose.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just loving your kid the best you can, the best way you know how, and filling your own gaps when you do see them. That's all you can do.
I saw a clip. I am a huge supporter and lover of Dr. Gabor Mate and the work that he does with addictions, with trauma, with family, with parenting. And I saw a clip of him the other day where he was saying, there's somebody in the audience who asked a question of like, how do I know I'm ready to be a parent? I'm so worried of traumatizing my kid. And he had said the fact that you're asking yourself that question means that you're already a step ahead of where your parents were.
Absolutely.
Right? The fact that you're aware of these things and you're wanting to be better means that you're ready to make those changes. He's like, if your parents have made this many mistakes, by you asking yourself that question, you're going to make this many mistakes.
For sure.
The mistakes are still going to happen. We're human, right?
Yeah, the mistakes are just going to be different, and then they might be less, right? I tell parents all the time that say, I don't want to be my mother, I don't want to be my father. The fact that you're asking yourself that question, you're already going in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's the people who blindly just repeat history. And again, they do that for a reason, right? Every behavior makes sense if you've got enough context. So the fact that you're saying, I don't want to be like X person that hurt me, you're miles ahead of the person who just kind of put the blinders on and kept doing what they were shown, taught, learned to believe in life. You're already creating change by being mindful of what might affect your kid, and giving yourself a huge pat on the back for that. You're already being a protective and doing your best to be a safe parent.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for hanging out today. This was fun. This was our first podcast episode. So thank you, everyone, for being here with us on this journey.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's show. If you have any next questions for our next show, please reach out to our Instagram at Health Counseling and Therapy, or via the contact page at healthcounseling.ca. If you're looking for a therapist,
Hi.
Feel free to visit healthcounseling.ca to check out our therapist profiles. The directory, Psychology Today, or another listing site are also great resources for finding therapists as well. Our website also has show notes and mental health resources. If you know anyone who may benefit from today's conversation, please feel free to share. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe or like so you can receive more content from us. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, take care.
Thanks, everyone.